Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. I have a couple of really interesting quotes to share with you. These come from the teachings of Lorenzo Snow. This is one of those books that I got from my dad when he passed away. He used to work for the church, and this was gifted to him, I think, as a Christmas present. I have to ask my mom. But anyway, let's just go ahead and get right into it. So I have two quotes. The first one is under a section or a paragraph called "Bishops and Stake Presidents are Sentinels to Guard the Temples." So that's not part of the quote. It's just like a little introductory sentence for the quote. Okay, Lorenzo Snow. This is from Deseret Weekly. The bishops and presidents of stakes should stand as sentinels, and they should not allow any to pass by them into the temple that are unworthy. It is something like what we learn in the temple about a time that is coming when persons who go into the celestial kingdom will have to pass by the angels and the gods. Now, I thought this was interesting because this is pretty similar to President Brigham Young's quote about the endowment. I'm sure, well, let me know. Did this ring a bell to you when I said sentinels? Let me show you the quote that this is similar to, and maybe he had this in mind when he said this. So we have Brigham Young out of the book called Discourses of Brigham Young, put together by John A. Widsoe, page 416. And he says, "Let me give you a definition in brief. Your endowment is to receive all those ordinances in the house of the Lord, which are necessary for you after you have departed this life, to enable you to walk back into the presence of the Father, passing the angels who stand as sentinels, being enabled to give them the key words, the signs, and tokens pertaining to the holy priesthood, and gain your eternal exaltation in spite of earth and hell." So I just think that's really neat. So I have this under sentinels currently on row 331 of my quotes A through Z spreadsheet. And by the way, I have a link for my spreadsheets in the description box of each video, so you can access this at any time. There's actually two people looking at it right now as I'm making this. And I could have sworn that there are a couple other quotes that we've gone over that would probably fit in this row. But I can't think of them right now. If I ever come across those again, I will put them here. But this is here in case you want to refer back to this. Again, you can copy anything that you want on here, copy the entire spreadsheet, add it to your own study, whatever. So anyway, so that's really cool. Now let's go on to the next one, and it's right under it. Nothing is more beautiful than a resurrected being. Now, this is one that I've been wanting to do for a while, because this is another one I feel like I've heard a few different times. I'm going to have to go and find those quotes, but here's a brand new one, and this is from Lorenzo Snow. "We know that in the future, after we have passed through this life, we will then have our wives and our children with us. We will have our bodies glorified, made free from every sickness and distress," which sounds amazing. Every sickness and distress, and rendered most beautiful. There's nothing more beautiful to look upon than a resurrected man or woman. There's nothing grander that I can imagine than a man can possess than a resurrected body. There's no Latter-day Saint within the sound of my voice, but that certainly has this prospect of coming forth in the morning of the first resurrection and being glorified, exalted in the presence of God, having the privilege of talking with our Father as we talk with our earthly father. That's from Conference Report, October 1901. Okay, so I have an entry for that as well. Also on my quotes A through Z spreadsheet, currently on row 300, resurrection appearance. So I just have these two so far, and once I find those other ones, I'll put them on here. But I thought it'd be good to do a quick review of resurrected bodies and beings. So first, let me read this other quote that I have under resurrection appearance. This is by Sterling W. Sill of the First Quorum of the 70. You can find this in the November 1976 Ensign. The article is called "To Die Well." I guess this actually would have been a conference talk. Okay, so we know quite a lot about celestial beings, as we have had a number of them appear to us upon this earth. And each time they have come, those who have received them have said they are impossible to describe. I'm gonna have to hunt those down because I want to see what everybody said about it. When the prophet Joseph Smith had his vision of the Father and the Son, he said, "Their brightness and glory defy all description." That is, we don't have any background of knowledge. There isn't a vocabulary to use in describing a celestial accomplishment. So he says something kind of interesting here. He says, we have had a number of them appear to us upon this earth. And I know that is true, not just from being a lifelong member of the church and being familiar with all the different scriptures and stories, but now that I'm doing this YouTube channel and I'm putting together these spreadsheets, I have this one called Timeline Visions and Visitations, where I'm attempting to collect all of them that I can find. And it's going to be a long time before, I have a more comprehensive list, but already so far, there is a lot. Starting with the first vision, this is a chronological collection of appearances and visitations and the accounts. The accounts can be found in column K. You just double click on this and it'll show you the entire account. But there are a lot. And not just in the beginning of the church. It goes all the way, as far as like what I have right now, it goes all the way to 1974 with Gordon B. Hinckley mentioning that Father Lehi was there. 1983. Gordon B. Hinckley mentioning that Father Lehi was at the dedication of the Mexico City, Mexico temple. And I'm sure that it still happens just like it did back in the past. I'm sure that President Nelson and others have probably had visitations. There is one on here that's new. I'm not going to make a video just for this one, but I might as well knock this out right now while we're looking at it. So this one is a visit of the angel Moroni to Joseph Smith in Harmony, Pennsylvania. And this is what happened. You can find this in the Millennial Star, July 24th, 1881, an article called Mormonism. Actually, it was first recorded in, I think it was called the Kansas City Journal. But David Whitmer, who was one of the three witnesses, was being interviewed. And maybe some of you already know about this. Maybe you don't. I think that I already did, but I just wanted to get this down as another visitation that you may not typically think about. When Joseph first received the plates, he translated 116 pages of the Book of Lehi with Martin Harris as scribe. When this had been completed, they rested for a time, and Harris wanted to take the manuscript home with him to show his family and friends. To this, Joseph demurred, but finally asked the Lord if Harris might be allowed to take it. The answer was no. Harris teased Joseph for a long time, and finally persuaded him to ask the Lord a second time, pledging himself to be responsible for its safekeeping. To this second inquiry, the Lord told Joseph Harris might take the manuscript, which he did, showing it to a great many people. But through some carelessness, allowed it to be stolen from him. This incurred the Lord's displeasure, and he sent an angel. And I'm pretty sure this is the angel Moroni, because like whenever it had to do with like the gold plates or the translation of the Book of Mormon, my understanding is that it was always Moroni. So this incurred the Lord's displeasure, and he sent an angel to Joseph demanding the plates until Joseph had thoroughly repented of his transgression, would not allow him to have any use of them again. When Joseph was again allowed to resume the translation, the plates were taken care of by a messenger of God, and when Joseph wanted to see the plates, this messenger was always at hand. The 116 pages of the Book of Lehi were stolen, were never recovered, nor would the Lord permit Joseph to make a record or to make a second translation of it. So here's another not so pleasant visitation of an angel, the angel Moroni, basically having to be present because of what happened with the Book of Lehi incident. But it's another visitation. It seems like there were a lot of visitations in 1829. So you had John the Baptist, who restored the Aaronic priesthood. You had Moroni, who showed the three witnesses the gold plates, as well as David Whitmer's mom, Mary Elsa Musselman Whitmer. And then what we just read about Moroni having to be there after the whole thing with the Book of Lehi. And then the next one in 1829, we're not sure if it was 1829 or 1830, but that's when Peter, James, and John came and restored the Melchizedek priesthood. And also in Doctrine and Covenants 128, verse 20, it has this interesting little story without much detail about Adam, the archangel Michael, detecting Satan as an angel of light, trying to deceive, I guess, Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery. So as of right now, on my spreadsheet, 1829 was a pretty active year for visitations. But anyway, let's get back to this spreadsheet. So, okay. So yeah, there have been quite a few appearances of resurrected beings. Okay, next, I thought it'd be good to review this really quick. This has to do with, I guess, like resurrected bodies and what they can do and how they're different, how there's different types of resurrected bodies, so on and so forth. So let's read this from Joseph Fielding Smith, at the time president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. This is Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 2, pages 395 to 397. And he gives a lot of information about resurrected bodies. Okay, kinds of resurrected bodies. In the resurrection, there will be different kinds of bodies. They will not all be alike. The body a man receives will determine his place hereafter. There will be celestial bodies, terrestrial bodies, and telestial bodies. And these bodies will differ as distinctly as do bodies here. For example, the white European, I'll be politically correct here, blacks, Filipinos, Indians. Bodies will be quickened according to the kingdom which they are judged worthy to enter. Elder Orson Pratt, many years ago, in writing of the resurrection in the kind of bodies which would be raised in these kingdoms, said, quote, "In every species of animals and plants there are many resemblances in the general outlines and many specific differences characterizing the individuals of each species. So in the resurrection, there will be several classes of resurrected bodies, some celestial, some terrestrial, some telestial, and some sons of perdition, because they get resurrected too. Each of these classes will differ from the others by prominent and marked distinctions." So you'll have individuals just like now, how you look different from me, but we have the same type of body, a body that's currently in a telestial condition. However, there's going to be differences between celestial, terrestrial, and telestial bodies. Okay. Each of these classes will differ from the others by prominent and marked distinctions. Yet, in each, considered by itself, there will be found many resemblances as well as distinctions. There will be some physical peculiarity by which each individual in every class can be identified. All right, the next section is procreation limited to celestial bodies. Some will gain celestial bodies with all the powers of exaltation and eternal increase. These bodies will shine like the sun, as our Savior's does, as described by John. Those who enter the terrestrial kingdom will have terrestrial bodies, and they will not shine like the sun, but they will be more glorious than the bodies of those who receive the telestial glory. Okay, so already we're talking about the ability to procreate with the celestial body, and also like literally shining, emitting light like the sun, whereas other bodies will not be able to procreate. It will not shine. In both of these kingdoms, there will be changes in the bodies and limitations. They will not have the power to the power of increase, neither the power of nature to live as husbands and wives, for this will be denied them, and they cannot increase. Right? Because eternal marriage and families only exist in the celestial kingdom. Those who receive the exaltation in the celestial kingdom will have the quote unquote continuation of the seeds forever. They will live in the family relationship. In the terrestrial and the celestial kingdoms, there will be no marriage. Those who enter there will remain separately and singly forever. Some of the functions in the celestial body will not appear in the terrestrial body, neither in the telestial body, and the power of procreation will be removed. So again, just really quick, one feature that's not going to appear is this ability to like shine, and then also the power of procreation. And we don't know much more than that, like what that actually looks like. But I guess you can imagine, and we'll just have to wait and see what that's actually like. And maybe there's other functions that he's not mentioning here that won't be available to terrestrials or telestials. I don't know. All right, continuing. I take it that men and women will, in these kingdoms, be just what the so-called Christian world expects us all to be. Neither man nor woman, merely immortal beings having received the resurrection. Which I think that that's strange. I'm not trying to be like disrespectful to Christians, but I've said this before. When I was in the Army, I had a friend that was also an enlisted soldier, and he was there's like a job called, so you have the chaplain, which is an officer, and then on the enlisted side, you have chaplain's assistants, which are enlisted. And I was talking to him. He was a non-denominational Christian, and we were talking about this, and this is what he expected, was to, after this life, no longer be married. We talked about that because he was kind of like, in a kind way, he was just kind of like debating or criticizing our belief of eternal families. And he's like, no, after this life, me and my wife, it's like, we're not going to be married anymore, but we're going to be like, brothers and sisters. We're going to be like friends. And he talked about not having gender. And it's so weird, the criticism that we receive from other Christians when they have this belief of like being asexual beings without families after this life. It just, I don't know. I didn't grow up that way with those beliefs. So maybe it just like makes perfect sense to them. I guess it does. But it's like when you have beliefs like that, I don't know. It just bothers me that they call us a cult. That sounds a whole lot more culty and strange, that you lose your gender after this life. In that you have like, there's the God that's kind of like this all powerful, non-human alien type being that created you for unknown purposes. I don't know. Just to be like, I don't know. Sorry, I'm not trying to. Okay, let's just move on. I think our belief system is a lot more intuitive, and it makes a whole lot more sense. Okay, resurrected bodies pass through solid objects. Resurrected bodies have control over the elements. How do you think the bodies will get out of the graves at the resurrection? And just really quick, that is one thing. I'm going to have to try and study that a little bit more, but I know that I've come across the idea that whatever does remain of your body, even though your body, decays over time, whatever does remain that's not lost will be like restored to you. So there is going to be like this kind of like literal, I guess, like bodies coming out of the graves, whatever remains, and then putting it all back together. When the angel Moroni appeared to the prophet Joseph Smith, the prophet saw him apparently come down and ascend through the solid walls or ceiling of the building. If the prophet's account had been a fraud, he never would have stated such a story, as we may be sure he never would have thought of such a thing, but would have had an angel come in through the door. Why should it appear any more impossible for a resurrected being to pass through solid objects than for a spirit? For a spirit is also matter. It was just as easy for the angel Moroni to come to the prophet Joseph Smith down through the building as it was for the Savior who appear to his apostles after his resurrection in the room where they had assembled when the door was closed. The same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, came Jesus and stood in the midst and said unto them, Peace be unto you. Here you see that the door was shut for fear of the Jews, but this did not prevent Jesus from appearing to them in the room. How could he do it? He had power over the elements. This has been explained by some scientists by the statement that we are limited to 3 dimensions, but superior beings may have many dimensions of which we know nothing. One learned man who does not believe in the resurrection stated that a mortal being, if his body could vibrate in the proper manner, could pass through solid objects. Just how resurrected beings do it, we do not know, but that it has been done, we do know, for the Savior and others have done it. So it's going to be incredible. We're going to be beautiful. We're going to have all sorts of powers. There's not going to be any disease or anything like that. Everything's going to be perfection. And it's my personal belief, I think I've said this before, but it's been a while. I really do think that every single person is actually beautiful. Like if you were, no, I'm saying like, oh, of course they're beautiful. No, like actually attractive, beautiful, in the obvious sense. I think that all of us are, but in this telestial condition, we have different things that act upon us, different environmental factors and deformities and things that are just wrong with our imperfect bodies. But I think that if all that was taken away, I really do think that every single person is actually beautiful. Because for one thing, I feel like it just makes sense that God wouldn't make somebody that is inherently ugly. I think that everything that we see is a result of this mortal experience. And I feel that way also because I think you sometimes see it when you have somebody that, looks ugly, but then with just a few tweaks, like maybe they kind of clean up a little bit, lose some weight, whatever, like they suddenly are pretty or beautiful or handsome or whatever. I've seen it a number of times in my life. I know that you have too. When you saw somebody, you're like, oh my gosh, that person's ugly. But then you see them again and they've made changes and it's like, oh my gosh, no, they're not. They're not ugly at all. So I think that the resurrection is going to be a pleasant surprise for all of us. Okay. And let's just finish with this. This is President Nelson in his Think Celestial talk of the October 2023 General Conference. He says, mortality is a masterclass in learning to choose the things of greatest eternal import. Far too many people live as though this life is all there is. However, your choices today will determine 3 things: where you live throughout eternity, the kind of body with which you will be resurrected, and those with whom you will live forever. Sorry, these things are, I copied this from another entry, so that's why this is not highlighted. Let me just fix that really quick. So he just mentioned this, and this isn't really brought up too many times, like different types of resurrected bodies. It's not that frequent. But he brought it up because this is something that we're going to have to think about pretty soon, because those that are living in telestial law are going to be removed from this earth, right? So, yeah, we have to understand that there isn't any such thing as progression between kingdoms after this life. I have another entry for that. That's like a misconception that after the final judgment, you can still progress and eventually make it to the celestial kingdom. No, it's decided here, immortality, and it's not a matter of time. I think that we always think, well, just given enough time, like surely through eons I would progress. No, you wouldn't. It's not about that. The Lord has a perfect plan, and he said, okay, mortality is the time for you to show who you are and what decisions you make and what you're worthy of. It's not like he said, well, okay, we're going to do this. Most of you will be able to tell me here, but later on through the eons, you'll be able to progress. No, that's not how it is. If you want to look into that further, I'm not going to do that now. You can go to Kingdoms of Glory right here, row 194, progression from one kingdom to another. And the prophets and apostles have been pretty clear on that. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.